As long as I was going after the crooks that didn't have badges, I was everybody's hero.
So, during the making of the movie, I watched it. I liked it. I liked the guy that played you. I liked the guy that played David Koresh. Good actors.
Taylor Kitsch.
Yeah. Did you meet the guy who played you?
Rory Culkin.
What'd you think of him?
Macaulay Culkin's brother. The whole Culkin family actually are actors. Very, very interesting. Yeah, he's a great kid. He was real. At first, he was very quiet, and I think he was very standoffish. He didn't like that I was there because he had never played someone who was a real person before.
Yeah.
He only played characters, and I guess as an actor, that's a deal to play someone real. There's a lot of pressure. And I just wanted to tell him, I wish I would have early on, that there's no pressure, dude. Just do your thing. Don't worry about it. And I think he worried about it a lot. He's
kind of artistic.
He's an in tune. Yeah, he's definitely in tune to things. I respect, I loved his connection he had with the young girl that played Serenity.
Yes.
There. And they had a special connection, even off the camera. I could see them, talk very deeply. And he was very good with her. It was amazing. And it reminded me very much of my experience with the real Serenity. And I think he played me more in tune, more emotional than probably I really am. I'm very boisterous. I'm very much a drummer, if you will. And that part he didn't play so well because it's hard. You have to be a certain kind of character. But it didn't matter because I like what he did. And at the end of the day, I think, he did an excellent job.
He came off
and he's a great kid too.
I thought he came off very loving.
Yeah. Well, yeah, very much so.
He's playing a real scumbag right now.
Yeah.
On City on a Hill with playing opposite Kevin Bacon.
Oh, I got to see that.
Yeah, it's a Boston police show. He plays like this drug addict snitch.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds
not at all like he is in Waco.
What's that called?
City on a Hill.
City on a Hill. I'll have to go look at. I saw him.
Kevin Bacon.
He did the Mayhem Story, which is the Swedish heavy dark metal band that burnt all the churches in Sweden.
I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, they have the darkest story in all of heavy metal, and one of the characters killed himself, one of the original band members, and then the other one took pieces of his skull and pieces of his fragments of his body and made jewelry out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, dark story. But he played one of those members, and it was pretty darn good, man.
Where was this?
The death scene at the end, I was very impressed with Rory Culkin. He did a great job with that movie. It's called Mayhem.
What country is it set in?
It's set in Sweden.
Sweden.
And it's a real story based on a real person.
Wow.
And I guess he said death threats from the other individual who was in jail about playing that part, so...
Well, he plays a real scumbag in City on a Hill. It took me a while to figure out who he was. I was like 4 episodes in. I go, wait a minute. That's the guy that played David Thibodeau.
That's cool. I got to see that now.
Yeah.
Speaking of threats, you've had some threats, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had a few.
That's always fun.
I put a lot of people in prison for life that are getting out right about now.
Oh,
So,
that's reassuring, Vic.
that's like why we went to the restaurant. I always sit with my back toward the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that too. I got to face the door. To me, it comes from reading the autobiography about J. Edgar Hoover, our old friend J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, he's a scary one.
And they always had to do, yeah. I have a crazy story. I'm going to tell it. Can I tell it?
Yeah,
Let's tell
please.
it. So J. Edgar Hoover, back in the 80s, there was a book that had come out about J. Edgar Hoover. I can't remember the name of it, but in the book, what it featured was the famous pictures of him in drag with his friend Clyde, his lifelong partner. Now, I don't have a problem with what anyone does. We live in an age where you are who you are, and you should be able to be who you are without anyone being vindictive or killing you or hurting you or shooting you for who you are. And you should be able to be who you are as long as you're not hurting anyone. The problem I have with someone like J. Edgar Hoover is the fact that, he did so many terrible things to so many homosexuals and so many people that he disagreed with because they were not his ilk, right?
Yeah, didn't he?
And yet here he is dressing in drag with his friend, his lifelong friend, Clyde. An ultimate hypocrisy. Now, I bring this up for a reason. The pictures of him are very much him dressed as a woman. And again, that I don't care about. I care about the fact that the same person putting people to jail for what he is calling a crime. And
Right.
he's sitting there doing it behind the scenes. I was telling someone, one of the producers on the set of Waco, about this picture. And I spent 3 hours one afternoon trying to find that picture online. It's been scrubbed from the internet. I could not find that picture.
I don't doubt it.
I looked and I looked and I looked. Now, what they have, now this is interesting how they do this. What's in its place, there is a picture of J. Edgar Hoover's head that has obviously been photoshopped onto a woman's body. The original picture was J. Edgar Hoover's body and J. Edgar Hoover's head. So what they're doing is they're hoping that people will find that picture and say, "Oh, that's obviously Photoshop."
Disinformation. Yeah,
Exactly
that was a J. Edgar Hoover trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somebody, and they've scrubbed that. You can't find that picture now.
Disinformation was one of his tools in his tool bag. Disinformation, intimidation, isolation.
Yeah.
That's what he would do to people. Colonel Jim Adams, who was head of the DPS here in Waco for over a decade, who was over the Texas Rangers when I got arrested.
Yeah.
He was former deputy director of the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover. He headed up the domestic spy program, the program that kept files on homosexuals and war protesters and civil rights activists. Colonel Adams admitted to a Senate committee that they had, over 8 million files on U.S. citizens. And this was a long time ago when he made that admission. That was in the 70s.
That was before the NSA.
Yeah. And that was the agency, that was the part of the agency that is responsible for the Martin Luther King bedroom tapes.
Oh, yeah.
So that's how nasty those people can be. Yeah. God, it's been great having you, David.
It's been a lot of fun, man.
Have I forgotten to ask you something you'd like to say?
There's so much we didn't get to cover. That's the thing about Waco. Every room you go into, there's another room behind it, and you could just keep going and going and go. There's really so much information. We covered the important aspects to me, the CS gas, of course, and just the fact that there was a raid at all, the fact that helicopters could be firing into a building on the first day, and they still claim to this day that the helicopters did not fire at the building. And it's like even the kids came out and made pictures of the building and took crayons and were putting holes in the roof, and the psychologists were like, "What's that?" Those are bullet holes. Where do you think bullet holes came in the roof? From the helicopters, guys. So it's like even the kids are saying that the helicopters shot into the building.
Yeah.
I had friends that said directly they saw the helicopter shooting. And, we have Peter Gent, who was killed on top of a water tower, and the autopsy report showed that the bullet was from straight on. It was not at an angle. He could only have been killed from one of the helicopters. And they just deny. They deny. They just refuse to accept responsibility or to tell the truth about it. And it's just one of those things, you either believe them or you believe the people that were there. And personally, I don't care if you believe me. I'm not telling my truth for the doubters. I'm telling my truth because I have to.
I've gotten to that place with my own story.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, and that's another good thing Gary Richardson said to me after I was indicted. He said, "Vic, your friends don't need an explanation. Your enemies aren't going to believe one anyway." So, okay. Well, that gives me a lot of freedom.
That's nice.
Yeah. So you mentioned at lunch about a foundation. Have y'all started that foundation yet?
Yeah, I'm working with some, thank God, because I'm just terrible at this. I'm working with some scholars, some biblical scholars, and we're starting the Mount Carmel Historical Fund. And boy, I didn't have to we talk about these terrible things, and then I have to talk about reality. And that's the person, or what Mount Carmel is today, is there's this guy that's living out there with his family, Charlie Pace. Charlie was someone who studied under George Roden, was a friend of George Roden's, and when David took over, he left. He was, left the property, chose George. Wasn't there for the siege, wasn't there for the 51 days, wasn't there for the burning. After the building caught fire after everything was over and the FBI allowed people back onto the property. Charlie ended up there with his family and started living on the property. Clive was released, lived on the property, and Clive chose to work with Charlie and let him share the Mount Carmel with him. Make a long story short, over the years, Charlie is, the church was built by volunteers who came together from all over the country to build Mount Carmel, a chapel for the survivors. Charlie has kicked off one of the older ladies, Santoyo Ophelia, who was the mother of Julie, who died. All her grandkids died there. She was asked to leave the property. Clive ended up leaving the property because he just got sick of dealing with Charlie. He was just a
Does Charlie have any
person.
legal claim to the property that allows him to kick people off?
He has put the property in his name under a deed. Apparently, there's a lot of prior cases that have gone forth. I have binders on those cases, and we're trying to figure out. I guess he does technically own the property now. The problem I'm having, he's claiming to say that he tells people he's a survivor, and he's taking money from people on behalf of survivors. And none of us see any of that. And it would be one thing if he wanted to do the right thing and allow people who went through that to live out there if they wanted to, or to be out there without being stronghold. But that's not what Charlie does. So I want to try to find out where the property is, at the very least. Set up something so in the future, the children of David, or the children like the Jones kids, Heather and Kevin, they should have rights to that property and be on that property if they want to. Their families died there.
Yeah.
And right now they don't. And it's all
Heather
by
was
this individual.
The youngest survivor, right?
Yeah, correct. She was 9. Well, she was the last, not the youngest, but she was the last kid to come out.
The last one out, yes.
Yeah, her story is phenomenal. Did you ever hear the teddy bear story?
Mm-mm.
When Heather came out, she didn't want to leave. Her dad was there, and she loved her father, David Jones. David Jones, of course, was the mailman who found out what was happening, was pulled over by someone in the media who said, "Where's Mount Carmel?" He found out that there was a raid going on, something big was happening, and he went back and told David while David was meeting with Rodriguez on the last day. So that's who David Jones is. He was the brother to Rachel and Michelle. So it's all the family, the Jones family. He lived off property, but his daughter was there. Kevin went out, and she went out after, and she was meeting with her dad, and her dad gave her a teddy bear and a backpack that had her stuff in it, and said, "You have to go with your mom now. Be a big girl and go out and face the tanks. They're gonna take you to your mom." And she didn't want to go, but she did because her and David said, David Jones and David Koresh were there. They saw her off. She had her teddy bear, and she didn't want to put it in her backpack because she figured the agents would take it, so she wanted to keep it. She walked up to the Red Cross sign, and there was a rut that one of the tanks had made with its tread, and she fell in the hole. And when she didn't even have a chance to get up, 2 agents got out of the tank. One grabbed her backpack and the teddy bear, and one grabbed her. And they put her in the tank, and they took her to TSTC, which was the staging area. And they had her upstairs in a room where they were going to have a final call with her father. And so, the dad would know that she made it, and she could talk to her dad one last time. And so they called. She was very emotional after. She said to me that she felt like she wouldn't see her dad again after that call. And she didn't know why, but she was crying. And one of the agents said, "Well, come on, dear, let's take you downstairs. We'll get you soda." And they took her downstairs, and they were walking by a room that they had opened. And she could hear 2 agents, and they're laughing. And they're laughing, having a great time. And they're like, "Well, maybe there's something in here. Maybe there's a bomb in this teddy bear." And she walks by, and she sees her backpack destroyed, all cut to shreds on a counter. And they have her teddy bear, and they got a knife in it, and they're ripping her teddy bear apart, the last gift that her father gave her. And they're like, "Hey, maybe there's a bomb in here, ha ha," and they're joking about it. And that broke her heart, and they took her to get her the soda, whatnot. But to this day, Heather can't, if she sees somebody in uniform and gets pulled over, she's a basket case. And the cop often thinks that she's on something because she falls apart. We went into a convenience store, and a cop held the door for a sheriff's department. And I was just looking at her, and she went like this, and she started to shake, and she would fall. I had to grab her hand to keep her from falling over. I'm like, what? And I look at the door, and there's the cop, and she had that much of a visceral reaction to someone in a uniform.
That's so sad.
Yeah, so that's where, I mean, these kids have, this has affected them their entire lives. She lost her entire family. Other than her mother, she lost all her cousins.
Was Susan Schroeder a Davidian? Or does that name ring a bell?
Kathy Schroeder.
Kathy Schroeder. Okay.
Yeah, she was a member. Her husband, Mike, was staying at the Mag Bag, which was the property that was down there at the end of the Double E Ranch Road that David had rented. And he wasn't there for the shooting on February 28th, but he tried to sneak onto the property with a couple other individuals. Bob Kendrick and another guy, they tried to sneak onto the property. He wanted to get to his family, of course, and they shot him. They shot him several times, and he had 2 bullet wounds at the base of his skull, so he was actually finished off execution style. And they left his body out there for 2 days. He had been chewed on by some animals and stuff like that. So, yeah.
That's so sad.
That's your tax dollar at work, guys.
People can be very cruel.
Yeah.
Especially when they have the power of the government behind them.
What was pre-siege? What was it like living there?
It was monastic. It was very sparse. There was electricity, but there was no AC.
What was the daily diet like?
We had outhouses. That was fun.
Before the siege?
Sure. The diet was mostly popcorn, bananas, oatmeal, millet, some meat, never any pork. No, the seafood was, it was very, very Leviticus. Deuteronomy, Leviticus. David very much followed what a typical, Jewish person would follow. The first 5 books of Moses were very important. So it was definitely, he was a cross between Old Testament and New Testament, bringing it all together. But the dietary rules were very much like that. No pork.
Besides David, were the other men out there expected to be celibate?
You made that choice for yourself.
Right.
For yourself. A
For
lot
yourself.
of people left because they did not want to be. They didn't want to, live that way. And
But could you stay there and not be celibate?
not really. Like David Jones wasn't really a member. He lived off the property, but he was still, because he was family, and like David, he was allowed to come and go, but he couldn't live there. If you couldn't abide by the rules, you couldn't live out on Mount Carmel. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be castigated by the group. You could still, come out and visit, but that was a very specific experience for very specific people. People that they would call the waste sheath, the first of the first fruits. And so in knowing that and having that knowledge and be giving the knowledge of the 7 seals, there were definitely certain things that you were expected to step up to. And that was one. And that was, one that I struggled with, certainly. Like, people say, would you be there today? And I probably not. I mean, I don't think I could have lived my life as a eunuch.
Yeah.
Or even under that kind of extreme discipline. No, maybe, I don't know. I didn't have to take that route. But it's, for me, it was, I wanted to know what the scripture meant. I wanted to know what the scripture said. So to me, it was very much a case of the curiosity killing the cat. I was curious enough where I wanted to know. I met David, Steve. These guys were fascinating. They had this wisdom, and I wanted to learn it, and I did. And in learning that wisdom, I became convicted by that wisdom and decided that I had to make, it wasn't me against David. It wasn't like I had to make that choice. The choice I had to make was, do I follow what I believe and perceive to be God's word, or do I leave and do my own thing? And at the end of the day, I had to stay and follow what I perceived to be God's word. So
That makes sense.
yeah, I made my choice. Like I said, had it gone on years and years, I don't know. I don't know if I would have been able to deal with it, but it was enough. I had a pretty quickening experience. I was only there solidly for a year, but the things I experienced in that year were a lifetime of experiences.
Sounds
Both
like
both
it.
good and bad.
Yeah.
And the thing, you know, the other thing about something like Mount Carmel is the people that you meet through it. You meet the absolute demons of the world, as I've been faced with, time and time again. You meet the Walter Smiths. You meet, you know, all those people that sit up there and look into the camera and lie. You know, the Jeffrey Jamars who make the decisions to have people gassed and killed and hold the fire trucks back while the place is burning. You know, you meet these just incredible, just terrible humanity, examples of humanity. But you also meet some of the greatest people ever. Like when I first met James Tabor. Tabor was one of the guys, he was a theologian, and heard David Koреш's message and say, hey, listen, this isn't just Bible babble. He actually has a message. It's something that we as scholars have studied scripturally, and we want to know more about what he's saying. How about he writes a manuscript, gives it to us, and then everyone can come out? That was a great plan. David wanted that plan. The FBI said that they would go with that plan, and as soon as David started writing his 7 seal manuscript, they went in with the tank and the assault plan.
Yeah.
So they didn't. He actually, the first seal came out through Ruth Riddle, who brought out remember the floppy disk? She had a floppy disk of the first seal that he had written the night before they came and attacked him. So it seems like once he actually was writing his seals, that's when they stepped everything up even more.
That's one of the things that David's mom and I talked about on the phone. Because I had the idea that if I could get everybody out, I know how to drag a trial out, even if it's Walter Smith, you know.
Yeah.
And I told her, I will make sure that David gets his say, that he gets to talk about not just what happened at Mount Carmel, but gets to talk about his message, gets to talk about what he wants the world to know. I said, we'll get it all out. We'll get it out on the witness stand. It'll go worldwide. And I think that's what scared the FBI. I think that's why they put my name on a bullet.
That's interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, for me, people say, why did all this happen? And, you know, there's fact after fact. I give all kinds of political reasons why this happened. But if you're looking at it from the point of view of people that were there and had to go through the 51-day siege, it was a fulfillment of Scripture. I mean, they made David's vision come true.
That's true.
It's almost like they listened to what he said and made it happen.
I know.
It's just, people don't get that.
I know.
That's incredibly powerful for a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
130 people expecting this to happen, and then it happens, and instead of saying, oh, we made a mistake and backing off, they double their efforts.
Double down, yeah.
To make it come even truer and truer and truer. Holy crap.
I know. I was watching it and reading it, and I just couldn't believe the way that the government was stepping in it and playing into David's message entirely.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the people at Mount Carmel had no choice but to do what they were doing.
Yeah.
What was it?
Oh, I like the way you just said that. That the people of Mount Carmel had no choice to do.
But to do what they did.
That's very well said. That's very well put, and that's very much true.
What was it like in there, David, during the siege?
It was it was frightening every day.
I bet.
What happens? You went through the first day, and then there was a shock. So, you know, for me anyway, I was in absolute shock for about 24 hours, and then, you know, there was the uncomfortable. What's going to happen next? We're dead, but we're not dead now. So you got that intense fear, but also elation that you're not dead, and wow, God has saved us from it. You know, they were supposed to come in and run us over, and they didn't even get in the door. And that thought sat with me for a very long time. The fact that these people were supposed to come in and run us over, and they couldn't even get through the door. Wow. And look at that. They had helicopters. They had 75 armed people. They had fully automatic weapons. They were dressed in black. They came in cattle trailers. They didn't get in. That was a miracle. See, these things, none of this is to be taken lightly. And, you know, again, as I said, every year we do a memorial. At the memorial this year, I did a speech that I had prepared. And I said at every single aspect of this, from the first day on, at every turn, the government were the aggressors. See, they make it sound like we went gunning for them. And they make it sound like we were hard to deal. We were attacking them. Same thing the SEC is doing in the Ripple case, which we'll talk about later. But they always make it seem like, oh, they're the victims. No, you're the big brother. You're the one going after people. You're not the victim. So to ever play victim is crazy. Using all your power to victimize people and then playing the victim. And that's what they did. You know, they made it sound like it was like we attacked them. And at every step, they were the aggressors, bringing on the tanks, running over Peter Gent's grave, mooning us, giving us the bird. You know, people would exit the building, they throw a flashbang grenade at you. These are aggressive tactics, my friend. And at every point, the government were the aggressors here. Every point, all the way to the end.
It makes me sad.
And then blame us.
Yeah.
Because the kids don't come out, because no one can bring their children out. They don't mention that all the mothers and kids are in a concrete structure under wet blankets and they're gassed to death. They don't mention that part. They don't mention that they blocked off accesses to the building so certain people couldn't get to where the kids were. They don't mention any of this. They just make it sound like we were so heartless that we wouldn't bring our kids out of a burning building. And it's just, it's
a lie.
It's why I wrote the book. I was so angry at how they handled it and how they just blatantly lied to us.
Well, I'm so glad you wrote the book. I'm so glad that Netflix picked it up. And I hope the whole world sees it twice, 3 times.
Nice.
I do. Yeah. Tell us the name of your book again, because we're going to be giving away copies.
Yeah, it's Waco, a Survivor Story. And there's a lot of these pictures I have on the website. My website is wacosurvivors.com.
Okay.
Survivors being plural. wacosurvivors.com. I have the complete transcript, a lot of the negotiation tapes on audio. Some of David Chris's early sermons from the 80s I have on audio on there.
Oh, wow.
Stuart Wright's writings, a ton of pictures, all kinds of pictures of Mount Carmel.
Give us the name of that website again.
Yeah, pictures from the movie being done as well, candid stuff. wacosurvivors.com.
wacosurvivors.com.
Yeah.
Look at that website, people.
Great information.
Look at the pictures. Read some of the transcripts. This is something that we should not forget.
Yeah. Thanks for, having me on and help bring the story out again.
Thank you, David. I can't tell you how much I appreciate having you here.
Me too.
Hi, I'm Vic Feazell. During these trying times, you might want to just stay home. And at the law offices of Vic Feazell, we understand.
That's why we're set up to handle your personal injury claim without you even having to come in. Just give us a call, and we'll take it from there. We can send any paperwork straight to your smartphone or computer. Don't delay, because if we don't put money in your pocket, you don't owe us anything. I'm Vic Feazell.